21 years ago, when we put 5 artists from Ipswich from that period, the early 1900s, and put them in a show over there. So they are all shown in this room, but we've added some who came a little bit later with a little slightly different style. We also added a couple of women. We didn't have any women before. Edna Baylor and her flowers. She painted many other things, but she was well known for her flowers. And we've added Carl Nordstrom, who also died in the 1960s. And Elsie Reinhardt, we talked about in the other room, her husband Frederick. We've added some of his work too.
Okay.
But you'll see mostly landscapes. That's what people paint here, even today. Even today. There's a lot of changing.
Okay, so let's go into the next room.
Good. Okay.
One of the prized possessions of Ipswich is the paintings here on this wall done by Arthur Wesley Dow. Can you tell us more about them and talk about the paintings on the wall, please?
First, I'd like to say a little bit about Arthur Wesley Dow. He's a native of Ipswich, born on High Street, East Street, and lived on Spring Street. So many of his paintings are painted from his home or his studio at the top of Spring Street. Arthur Dow was born in 1857 in Ipswich and died in 1922 in New York. He was a professor at Columbia Teachers College and also at Pratt University before he was at Columbia. He wrote extensively, lectured extensively, traveled around the world, and had many, many students. He's extremely important to the arts and crafts movement, and almost anyone who has an exhibit on the arts and crafts movement will ask for one of our paintings.
You also told me that Georgia O'Keeffe was one of his students.
She was. She was a student of his at Columbia Teachers College. Remember, Georgia O'Keeffe started out as a teacher, a classroom teacher, and that's what he was trying to teach. He was trying to teach teachers to teach about beautiful art and try to get them to identify. And he had methods, he had ways of that teachers should address a child to learn.
Now let's talk about these paintings on the wall.
Okay.
They look like they've been from the same location, many of them.
You are absolutely right.
Well, how come they look so different?
Okay, well, it painted over a fairly long period of time. The one on the lower right was painted in 1892, and the others are painted all the way up into the teens, in the teens.
Isn't it curious that the one on the lower right looks more contemporary than the others?
It looks more contemporary because at the time, Dow was trying very hard to figure out the difference between Western and Eastern art. That would be Western as we would think of as Japanese or Chinese art, and an American or European art. And this painting, to me, shows the struggle that's going on in his mind with the different kinds of brushstrokes, the clear blue sky that has no brushstrokes at all, more or less like a Japanese painting or a print, and then the foreground, and then you get into the blue dragon. This is called the blue dragon. The blue in the water, again, is the same. What we're looking at from his studio at the top of Spring Street, you're looking across the marsh, you're seeing Strawberry Hill in the foreground, or after the blue dragon. Then you're looking at Plum Island all the way across the strip of white sand over there, and you're seeing the edge of Great Neck, and you're even seeing a little bit of Eagle Hill. Each one of these paintings can be determined as to when it was done by looking carefully at what is going on in Strawberry Hill.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Almost like time-lapse photography.
Time-lapse photography. Even though Dow would have said that he would not depict everything exactly the way it is, he did not, but he did pay a lot of attention to detail. So the top of Strawberry Hill changes over time. Now the methodology of the way he painted is really interesting, because you see in this painting over here a lot of excess paint. On the one above, it's almost a stain, it's so thin. There's even canvas showing on that one.
Looks almost like a sketch.
It is. And then over here, in between, and the three on this side are all painted in the fall or sometime near the fall, whereas this one is early summer, the first one, 1894. And that was the most famous one. It's still the one that is sought after the most by lenders. And it was started out being called the Marshes and is now called the Blue Dragon.
The Blue Dragon.
A dragon comes in and goes out, and it also had a little bit of reference to the Japanese dragons. And people at that time were writing poetry all the time. There were poems about the Blue Dragon.
Sort of haiku, isn't it?
Yes, right. So
what about this painting in the middle? Looks
okay,
like
the reason this is in the middle is mainly Dow painted around Ipswich. Even though he was in the city, he had no desire to paint in the city. He painted in Ipswich, but one other place in the world fascinated him, and it was the Grand Canyon. His famous quotation, believe it or not, is that the changing colors in the Grand Canyon are no more interesting than the changing colors on the marsh in Ipswich.
Ah.
So the connection is there, and that's why they're hung together. So people can laugh a little bit with Dow's statement, but when he was at the Grand Canyon, again, he said he did not paint any specific view of the Grand Canyon. It was the way he felt, and the way he felt about painting was that it should be harmonious and that it should have the spirit of music to it. And so the Grand Canyon, the way he painted it, I think does have that. It is a Taoism, and yet if you look at his sketchbooks, he was very careful about telling every single color of every part of the sky. He labeled every cloud as a different color, so a little bit different. Wow. But he did try to blend both Eastern and Western art, and so he did a lot of these. He did photography, as you'll see in the corner. He learned to do ink wash drawings in the Japanese fashion. And most importantly, he learned to do wood block printing.
Well, let's take a look at those woodcuts.
Okay.
Stephanie, this particular painting here, you can tell that there is a definite Japanese influence on it. Can you explain the Japanese influence on this work?
Well, there are two things that are going on in this painting. One is that at that period of time, all artists were trying to depict night. And this is, I think, one of the best depictions of night. The moonlight is so hard to get in a painting. But at the same time, Dow was very involved with trying to integrate both Eastern and Western art. And here he is taking a scene that he looked at every night along the Ipswich River, and he's putting it, instead of in a landscape shape, he's putting it in a portrait shape, if we talk computerese today. And that would mean that he's using a screen, a Japanese screen, that would have been, all their landscapes are done in a vertical form. So this not only has a Japanese subject in Ipswich, but it is shaped the same way.
And also, discuss these two woodcuts we have here. And first of all, tell us what a woodcut is.
Okay. In Japan, the artist starts with a design, then someone cuts the woodcut, and then someone prints it. So there are three people involved in it. Dow refined that same idea into the person who cuts it should also print it and do all three stages, because Dow believed that everything that an artist touched should be done from start to finish. He even made frames for some of his paintings. And with a woodblock print, you can print it in any color you want. Once you have the lines right, you can print it in green or purple or white, depending on what you want. And he did this all the time.
And make as many prints as you want.
And you can make up to a certain number, but definitely you could do as many as you want. I mean, as many colors as you want.
Okay, Stephanie, we have one last painting I want you to tell us about.
Okay.
And it's right over here.
Okay.
Follow me.
Okay.
Now, Stephanie, I'm not saying that we saved the best for last, but this really is an unusual piece. Can you tell us about this painting?
This one was originally called Marsh Dawn, and it was one of his favorite paintings also. It has been loaned many times in the last few years. I'd say it's probably one of the most loaned paintings. You have to remember that Ipswich, this little town where Dow was born, has the finest collection of his work in the world. There's nowhere else that has anything close to what we have. All the major museums have one painting, but they don't have what we have. And this one was recently at the Clark Museum in a show called Like Breath on Glass. And I think Dow really captures that very soft look of almost like breath on glass. I think it's a totally good name for it.
Okay. Well, listen, Stephanie, I want to thank you for inviting Exploring the Arts into the museum
Yeah.
today. It's been a wonderful visit.
Well, we hope you'll come back again.
We will, and we want all of you people out there to stop by this really amazing museum and meet the wonderful people who run this place. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.